Seems that people have forgotten that we live in a current day crisis, that of homelessness. I had almost forgotten it too until it happened to me unexpectedly. I was unprepared for it. No one wants to prepare for it, so no one is prepared for it. No one wants to think about it, let alone talk about it. But I plan to do just that right here on Let's Talk. Hi, so today I just want to come on and talk about that horrific story in California where so many people lost their lives in a warehouse fire. 36 members from one community is a tremendous loss, um, and the magnitude of it is being felt, all around the world. Um, and I'm feeling this is not it's not a story about code violations or illegal tenancy. It's much broader than that. um, when I first became homeless, I actually felt like I had walked into an artist convention because I started to meet so many people who were actual artists who were living on the streets, guitarists, pianists, singers, dancers, people who draw through different mediums or different media. Is that right? So it was incredibly sort of um, like a wake up call for me. It was a time where I felt for once that I was an artist. I had almost sort of pushed that down during my whole career as a teacher. I never really felt that I fit in as a teacher. I didn't really know why. I knew that people would say, well, she's creative, but I always felt like I was too creative for the environment in which I worked. And so for the 3 years that I lived on the streets, it gave me an opportunity to really actually embrace um, who I was as an artist. I always wanted to, create music and write songs and poetry, and for once I began living out here, um, that opportunity just seemed to present itself. And I tried to actually move into a place. These warehouses, as you know, are all over the country. And I tried to move into one. And I remember there was a discussion about whether or not I could actually live there. It was a beautiful place for people to go in who wanted to, you know, create their music, have a sort of a studio environment for all of that. Um, but the landlord, of course, makes it clear that it's not a place to live. Well, many artists don't have many options, so many artists do end up living in those spaces. And as is the case in California, what happened was the landlord um, allowed people who had no place to go to stay there. Um, as is the case in many of these spaces across the country, he allowed people to stay there, and I I guess he would try to put on appearances as though it was just a studio sort of warehouse, and would have people put away their food or anything that would suggest that people were living there. So it's tragic because it is a community, and it's a community where people feel that they can be with like-minded individuals. They can grow. Their creative energies um, are allowed to flourish. Um, and it's hard being an artist. As I said, I taught for many years, and I never really embraced the fact that I was an artist. And I think in society, many of us are encouraged to do that. We go into sort of mainstream jobs, because it's safe, but very often we're frustrated in those professions. Um, and I think society sort of weeds out or eventually rejects those people who don't fit that sort of mainstream. So there are a lot of artists who do live very insecure lives, have a lot of housing instability because of their desire to create. And as I said, they're not just in one part of the country, not just in Oakland. The place where I want to go actually is in Detroit. And I spoke to a friend who actually said that he remembers that community and living in one of those communities at an early part in his life.
Like 40 some odd years ago, when they first opened up the old industrial warehouse section down there in Detroit. They opened it up, and it became an artist community, and a lot of us artists would occupy these spaces. They were like studio apartments, and we lived there for periods of time, and then we moved on. But that's the way this was back in the mid-'70s or so. Oh, there was always safety issues with the elevators, perhaps safety with fire regulations and things like that. But when you're 25, 30 years old, you don't worry about stuff like that, it seems. And when you're an artist, you're an artist, you know. So artists tend to overlook things like that to create their art, and they do lots of great sacrifices in the process, it seems.
I have a feeling that I'm going to have a lot more to say as this story develops, because it has such an impact on people who are housing insecure. A large population of the housing insecure community are people who are artists and don't have the affordable housing options that the rest of our society enjoys. I hope that, if nothing else, that this is a wake-up call to cities across the country that we can no longer ignore the plight of artists, no longer relegate them to underground, unsafe buildings. Everyone's not going to be that commercial success overnight or if ever. But people do have the right to live in a place that is safe and secure. And I hope that this will open up opportunities, and that cities across our country will begin to explore how we can address this need and to open up more opportunities for all its citizens. All right, I'm going to be back with more, but for now, this has been Let's Talk, and thanks for stopping by.